So now this is on you.
Okay.
Put it on my speakers.
And it's already recording to the cloud.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now you'll just do this as long as you need. When you're done, you'll press, I think you'll just press end and then end meeting for all, and then just leave the computer open so you can upload. I'm gonna go to the other building for breakfast.
Sure.
Just let me have to move anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be fine. And just make sure you go like this if the screen dims, because you want to keep the screen on.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning, Diné. My name is Pat McCabe, and I'm from Taos, New Mexico. And it's my honor and privilege to be speaking with you today. I want to greet you in the way that our formal greeting is in our own language. So I'll say, and I'm telling you what my clans are from my mother. We get our clans from my mother. And each of those clans, so I'm telling you my mother's clan, my father's mother's clan, my mother's father's clan, my father's mother's clan. So sometimes I joke and say those are my spiritual GPS coordinates. But all of those clans are referring to different places on the earth and different parts of our human journey. And then I also want to acknowledge that I was adopted into the Lakota Spiritual way of life path, much to my great honor and unending gratitude. And in that way, I was given the name Wiakpa Najiwi. And so, yeah, I just greet you on this day. And before I begin to say anything, I want to acknowledge this elder here, this holy Mani Wakam, and for those of you who may have been tracking and following what was taking place at Standing Rock, they really put those words out into the world, Mani Wachoni. So there's so much meaning to those words, but I just want to acknowledge this very, very sacred gift of life that unites all living beings into one family of life unique to Earth. And so what this one has been talking to me about, and so I'm looking for all those pieces that unify us and speak to our bond with this Mother Earth. And this is definitely one of those elders that and family members that does that. So what we say is, every living thing has to have this one in order to live. And so we are all bound to this one. We ideally share a commitment to this one. And so I think about that earth cycle, that water cycle that I learned from my science book in when I was 13 years old, 14 years old, right? And they talk about the water cycle, and they say, the water evaporates off the ocean and goes up to the clouds, and then the clouds travel, drop their rain down onto the mountain. The rivulets form streams and then eventually come down to a river, and then the river flows back to the ocean. And that's the water cycle, they say. But what this one has been pointing out to me is something. They're leaving out a really important part. The part that they're leaving out is that first this water travels through the body of every living organism. plant, flying one, swimming one, creepy crawling one, four-legged one, five-fingered one. Right? So this holy water of life is actually partaking of all the consciousness of all the life at all times. And it's also, sometimes I think about it as taking a read of the health and well-being of all the life on the planet too. How is Pat's liver doing over there? How is that dragonfly's eye doing over there? So this one is also kind of keeping track of the vitality and the life and the health and well-being of all of our relations on this Mother Earth. That's amazing for me to think of. And also all of that consciousness, all of that knowledge, all of that reporting about how it's going is also traveling from the ocean up to the clouds and being dispersed all through the mountains, down those rivulets, down those streams, and on the way, broadcasting all of that information to all of the life, for all of the life to have a capacity to respond to what's taking place. That's so powerful to me. And then I was also told by this one that this one also travels through time. Right? So this one, they say has always been here. Well, since the beginning of Earth, since the beginning of life on Earth, this one is here. They say it arrived from the stars. And so what I like to say is every single one of our ancestors, whatever our lineage is, wherever we come from, every single one of our ancestors had a drink of this very water right here. And not only our ancestors, but every fern's ancestors had a drink of this water. Every horse ancestor had a drink of this water. Every eagle ancestor, every sturgeon. So all of that ancestral history, all of the recording of life on Earth is also held here. And young people like it when I say, even Tyrannosaurus Rex had a drink of this water right here. So we carry all of that lineage with us in this glass right here. And so all of that knowledge, all of that lived experience, embodied experience on this Mother Earth is here. But also, for me as an Indigenous woman, I'm going to say that all of the ceremonies that have ever been, we'll almost always have water present for those ceremonies. And so they've been witness to these very deep connections, very deep ways of being a symbiotic organism in any particular location where these ceremonies are born out of. All of that consciousness, all of that long-term building of relationship, Indigenous peoples living in a place 1,000 years, 5,000 years, 10,000 years, 20,000 years. Listening, opening, hearing to, the making of our very language, the language I spoke earlier, the making of our prayers, and the ways that we developed to even be able to know the constellations that the Hubble telescopes and such are just now discovering. So there's a lot of technical knowledge, scientific knowledge that's being held right here too. And then we say this water must travel on to the future. And that our own consciousness currently, our own vitality, our own living right now is going to travel on to next generations. And again, not just human generation, to the next 7 generations of the flying ones, the next 7 generations of the swimming ones, the next 7 generations of the creepy crawly ones and of the four-legged ones. This one travels on and supports them. So I just want to present and acknowledge this powerful elder here and humble myself to speak before or in the presence of this one, and just acknowledge, what's taking place here, right? So, a new narrative is our theme. I took part in a gathering, a global gathering. We had about, I don't know, over 300 participants from all parts of this Mother Earth, all walks of life, and many indigenous people were present, scientists, ministers, entrepreneurs, engineers, environmentalists, philosophers, everybody. We're trying to get a collection, a sampling of humanity gathered. And our goal was to ask ourselves, we're always operating out of a story. We're always operating out of a story, but the one we're operating out of right now isn't a very good one. It's leading to death. And so, what other story could we be operating out of? And in the middle of that gathering, it was quite chaotic. I mean, what did we expect? But it was quite chaotic, and so I stepped out, and it was perfect, and it's not a criticism. But I stepped outside because I just needed a little break from the intensity and the chaos that was going on, that was arising. And when I went out, I was sitting in the sand dunes, and my spirit guidance came to me and said to me, "Look, rather than try to tell a new story from this point forward, you would be better off retelling the old story. And if you go back and retell the old story, it will automatically change your trajectory into the future." Let me say that again. Rather than try to tell a new story from this point forward, you, human beings, five-fingered ones, you would be better off retelling the old story. And if you go back and retell the old story, you will automatically change your trajectory into the future. So when I heard that, it rang true in my body. It landed. And at the same time, I had to say to myself, okay, I believe it, but what does that mean? What do I do with it? And so I had to wait a little while to understand how I could apply such counsel. But first, I want to point out that, over time, as I was thinking about it, I thought, why would we be better off? Why can't we just stand in this point and look forward and tell a new story? And I don't know, it just occurred to me that, I guess it was Einstein that said you can't solve a problem from the same place it was created. We're not equipped as a collective, as a human collective. We're not equipped to be able to generate a new story that's outside of the consciousness of the current story. And yet, one thing we do have is we got 20/20 hindsight. We got 20/20 hindsight. Man, if only we had done this instead of that. If only this hadn't been invented and gone so far. If only, So, we have great hindsight if we want to look back and see. And so, one of the things that was shown to me not long after I received that counsel was that there were points in human history that were named to me. I didn't identify them myself. They were named to me by my spirit helpers as archetypal woundings of humanity. And so I asked myself, what does that mean, archetypal wounding? archetypal wounding. And what it began to mean to me is that these were moments in our history where we had a fork in the road, and we chose a path. And because of that choice, it was like dominoes. After that, different things unfolded. And so there is a way to go back to those points in history and re-examine them, reframe them with our 2020 hindsight, reframe them with knowing some of the catastrophic results of having made that decision. So I don't think I'll go into the whole story of it. I have in other places, but one of the places of archetypal wounding that was pointed out to me was what took place during the so-called witch hunts in Europe. And I say so-called because it was more than about ferreting out people who were practicing dark arts. There were economic reasons. One of the economic reasons that's been pointed out to me was that there had been so many wars in Europe that many men had been killed, and that left widows holding land, and that was not setting well. So to be able to have some kind of mechanism to accuse these land holding women of something where they could be removed, served. So for instance, there was that, but what that did to the psyche of the men and the psyche of the women has been playing out, and actually was pointed out to me as being very foundational to what we refer to at this point as colonization, because it began in Europe. So what are the mechanisms for retelling a story? I was asked to bring ceremony to Europe with other indigenous women to address all of that, and we did. But rather than tell that story, what I want to say is one of the principal things that I learned about healing in that was so I was told, all disease is a lie, and all healing is the truth. And so what the healer does is, one, conducts their life in such a way where they remain in touch with truth. So what do I mean when I say truth? That's a very loaded word in the world today. Whose truth? My truth, your truth, their truth. That religion's truth. That science is truth. So just in a very general way, how I've come to define truth is it leading towards life. And for the nitpickers out there, I'm not saying that death is not part of life. Life includes death, but there's a natural cycle of death, and there's imposed violation of sovereignty death. And those are two very different things. So, so if it's leading towards life, I'm going to call it truth. And if it's part of a death way, which I consider modern world paradigm, which I also refer to as the power over paradigm. If it's leading towards death, then it's a lie. And here's how I know that for me, is actually on this morning I find myself in Northern California, and it's raining, and I'm looking out, and California is so luxurious, so decadent with life, so lush, certainly for a desert girl like me, it's just like kind of almost overwhelming, right? But when I look out there and I see what's going on, yesterday the earthworms came out. We call this the worm moon, I guess, is how this full moon of this month is referred to, because the earthworms begin to stir and begin to churn that soil, prepare it for the new life that's coming, right? So, I guess my point is that when I look outside, everything is doing one thing, always. It's trying to make more life, 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 trying to figure out how to, find the circumstances to create that next seed that will drop and create that next generation. In every direction, all the time. And so what I say about that is, clearly here on this Mother Earth where we find ourselves, where we've been placed, from my perspective, the plan is life. It's kind of obvious. It's all around. I mean, you have to look beyond the human, right? But anything that's beyond the human is working like that. It's all life. The plan here is life. That's the truth of the situation here. And even if I look at my own body, I've gone through times of illness and disease, some, short term, some longer things that I had to work out. But even as I witness my body, my body is continuously working to find a way to further my life. It's continuously working to find a way to heal me so that I can have vitality, so that I can continue on with my life over and over and over again. The body wisdom is just phenomenal, and mysterious too. So that's what I call truth. So going back to what I learned, so the healer lives their life in such a way where they keep the truth of life, we could say, present in consciousness in front of them, always delving deeper, always studying, always reminding, always having practices that affirm and reaffirm, their participation in life. And so what the healer does to the person, or with the person that has the disease, one, they have to ask for consent to help the person. The person has to give consent. Oftentimes, they also ask for consent to use the knowledge and medicine that they've been taught, whether it's by spiritual knowledge or plant knowledge, or even the knowledge of this one, may I use what I've been shown? So there's consent along. That's also part of this truth, the truth way of interrelated life, is acknowledging consent and the sovereignty of all beings. So they ask permission, and if that permission is granted, they propose truth to the person who has the disease, who is holding a lie, body, mind, heart, or spirit in some way. And they're skilled at this. And this is why the community calls them healer. And so when they propose that truth to the person with the disease, it rings true in the body, in the mind, in the heart, and the spirit, in such a way that that person has their story, their old story is retold. It'll make me cry. Their old story is retold. And they begin to be able to repeat that truth to themselves in a way that has just as much impact as when the healer first proposed it. And then the healer can step back, and that person is in this cycle of repeating that truth, until the vibration of the lie, and I always use this gesture, the vibration of the lie begins to vibrate at the vibration of truth. And when that happens, that's what we call healing. And that's what my spirit helpers said to me. So, I had never heard that version of healing before, and it just made so much sense to me. So I feel like at this time, our task is to be looking for the places that have the knowledge of life, such that we can receive that insight, that knowledge as truth, as antidote to all of the many deceptions that we have generated ourselves, that we've been indoctrinated into, that well, again, that are moving in a death way rather than a life way. So where do we find them? And you know, one thing that the holy people said to me at one point is, you are responsible for placing yourself before the truth frequently. And they're like adamant, they're scolding me. You are responsible for placing yourself before the truth frequently. Why? Why? Because they said, the human being is designed to be influenced by repetition, deeply influenced by repetition. So in our ceremonies, we know this. It's part of the way. There are songs that are being sung in a certain part of the ceremony. And the whole community knows that, and they sing them all at once together in those moments. And it generates such resonance with whatever the goal is. It creates a resonance for co-creating reality. So, I've been told over and over again, we were born for ceremony. We are made for ceremony. Our biology is made for ceremony. Now, where is the other place where we are so deeply impacted by repetition? Well, advertising is very aware of that. Capitalism is hugely aware of how vulnerable we are to repetition. So we're being bombarded, whether we want to be or not, by the influence of that power over paradigm. So let me pause for a moment and give a definition of what I'm saying when I say power over paradigm. To me, it's just what it says. It says, you cannot have what you need, food, clothing, shelter, on the most basic level, unless you overpower another in order to get it. And this is the paradigm that humanity is running on, by and large, over this beautiful, interrelated, sweet Mother Earth. So it's all around. And as an indigenous person, it's taken me a long time to understand, because it's complicated, it's tricky, it's painful at times to be in that position of occupying two worlds, as they say, right? But I've really come to understand what an incredible privilege I have, because I have a place to depart from modern world paradigm into another paradigm. I'll call it the way of the circle. The way of the circle speaks to the sovereignty of all beings. It speaks to how every member has a place, and no place is higher than the other. It also speaks to an accountability. It speaks to how every member has to maintain their part of the circle, or it starts changing shape and the energy doesn't roll around in that ideal way. But also every member has to uphold their part, has to be accountable and responsible for upholding their part, or the integrity. But also call it the sacred hoop. The integrity of the sacred hoop begins to fail. So, I look at this whole, the sacred hoop is, or some people call it the medicine wheel, is a symbol that's describing the construct of Earth, how deeply interrelated it is. Thich Nhat Hanh gave us that fantastic word. He called us interbeing. We are interbeing. We are a single organism, this Earth. So we don't question it in our body. It's like we don't say, oh well, we're just because you can't call a single organism. Look at you got hair. Hair is very different than fingernail. It's very different than liver. So they're all separate. No, we get it. You can have different aspects to have different parts that operate in different ways, have different textures, colors, everything, that are all part of the same organism. All of those aspects are all part of this organism of Pat McCabe, Woman Stand Shining, and so same with Earth. Kangaroo, amoeba, Mount Fuji, all different aspects of the same organism, right? So we're so interrelated, and so this power over paradigm repels what makes an interbeing be able to thrive. It repels cooperation. It repels collaboration. It repels trust. It repels intimacy. It repels all the things that make relationship work, really, in so many ways. So I have the privilege of being able to step out of this and go revisit this, the knowledge of it, the practice of it, the songs of it, the prayers of it, the foods of it, the activities of it, although they are deeply, deeply under siege right now. That's why I often say, if sustainability is the highest and most sought after technology on the planet, who should we be talking to? We should be talking to those people who've known how to live in one place over an extended period of time, 1,000 years, like I said, 5,000 years, 10,000 years, 20,000 years, in one place with relative health, harmony, and happiness. We call them indigenous people. They are actually the premier scientists of sustainability. That thing that we are grasping and desperately looking for. And what are we doing with this? What are we doing to these incredible scientists? What are we doing to this incredible knowledge that is held within language, that is held within relationship to land? We're destroying them. We're destroying the human library of understanding of how to be here. Makes no sense. So, placing myself before the truth frequently. How do I do that? How do I do that, especially when I don't have a ready-made place to move from here, to the way of the circle, to the science and understanding of what it means to be interbeing? Well, for me, I would say that we have to find a way to connect with this Mother Earth, to be with her, to slow down enough to hear her, to slow down enough to even notice what's happening. What are her cycles? What does this atmospheric river that's descending upon this place that I'm in right now, how does that change things? What has the history been? Who are those people? And they're not all people who look like me. They're farmers. There are, they've been paying attention, and some of them are multi-generational farmers in a place. What do they know about it? In my experience, remaking my relationship to Earth, which I had to do because of cultural interruption. My family is part of the history of the attempted genocide. My grandparents and parents were taken to Dutch Christian missionary residential boarding schools, where the very intent was, I mean, they stated it very clearly. It was no secret. It was no covert operation. They said, we want to make the process of taking these young children into these schools is to make their own culture so repulsive to them that they will never return. So that's what the previous generations to me subjected to. So I've had to do a lot of wayfinding myself. I've had to find my way back home. The proverbial journey back home. And I say that's my greatest gift to the world, is describing that journey, because I think that's the journey that we're all looking for. So I can't invite everybody to come and be Diné. That would further destroy Diné way, Diné understanding, Diné culture. But I can say a few things about what I have come to understand in that journey. One of the things that I've come to understand in that journey is that relationship to earth, and therefore relationship to life, and therefore relationship to interbeing, and therefore relationship to truth doesn't happen quickly. The pace is not the pace of this. It's becoming ever more frenzied. It requires finding a way to slow down. And in this, slowing down feels very, very radical. You have to, because the whole idea is you got to get the jump on the next guy, right? So to rest, to slow down, to reflect, to pause is not going to get you ahead of the next guy or gal. So it's a radical act, and it can feel like suicide. And I will admit that, when I had my big time of slowing down, it didn't happen because I thought it was a good idea. It happened, it was forced upon me. I had cataclysmic events go on in my world where I just went into shock. And I had no choice but to slow down. I couldn't go back into this. But that's why I say that, is because through that time, meanwhile, I got a mortgage bill coming, I got other bills coming, I got kids, and I'm frozen. I'm immobile, at least on the outside. On the inside, things began to happen, and I sat at my altar for about 2 years. And so the whole time I'm saying, so, Spirit, I got bills coming. I'm starting to pay my mortgage with my credit card. Like, that's really not okay. You can't do that. But, the Spirit said, don't worry. You will never regret this time of slowing down and getting quiet and listening. You will come to find that what is gained here at this time of your stillness, of your quieting, will become so valuable to this earth that you're not going to have to worry about anything. That was true. That's why I'm the one sitting here speaking right now, I guess. I even take that as a reflection of that success. So placing myself before the truth frequently, it's going to have to happen through slowing down. It's also going to have to happen, I think, by noticing that human beings are only one part of the circle. They're not the whole circle. They cannot be complete only amongst themselves and what comes out of their mind. So the people in the large urban centers, I have to ask, what does it mean to be surrounded continuously with only things that were created and conceived and came out of the human mind? All the buildings, all the asphalt, all the buses, all the cars, all the Starbucks, what does that do to a human being? What does that do to our perception of being interbeing? How can we really understand that we are interbeing, living every day in that circumstance? So there's some kind of effort that has to be made to reconnect with a reality beyond the reality that only comes out of the human mind. You know, so when I was looking at the sacred hoop and saying, okay, every single life form gets to have a seat here, including human beings, but not only human beings, right? We're like this part down here or something, you know, we're like one little spot. And we have to answer for ourselves. To me, it looks like from that perspective, we have to answer for ourselves collectively. You know, this structure does not acknowledge, okay, you know, the Diné people, they're doing good. The Lakota people are doing good. But those freaking Germans are just totally screwing up over there. You know, they don't count. You know, no, it's humans. This is us right here. We're a collective. And we're making a contribution to this construct, this interbeing. So when I look at this, I say, you know, every being here has been given away. The giraffe, the alligator, the dolphin, you know, the palm tree. Every single living being has been given a way to contribute its health and well-being and integrity to the health and well-being of the whole. Author Barry Lopez talks about the impeccable way in which they conduct their lives. Impeccable, what does that mean? I mean, I guess literally it means without sin, right? I think that's its etymology. What kind of sin? The sin of being detrimental to life, to the whole. The impeccable way in which they conduct their lives, not only to support their own kind, being able to move forward, again, making more life into the next 7 generations, but also supporting the entire ecosystem, as we like to say, the entire family of life surrounding them, which ultimately connects to the next one and the next one. So every single being is contributing to the well-being of the whole. That's what I see when I look out here, out the window, you know, at this life. So every other life form around us has an understanding of how to benefit the whole, not only their own kind, not only their own locale. Wow, that is powerful, powerful. Sustainability, right? Permaculture, all these names we put on top of it, right? This has been going on since T-Rex was here, right? And before. So we're being called to join the party. So this is a big prayer of mine right now. And I made up a word about it. And my prayer says, how do I be that being that causes all other life to thrive as a 5-fingered one? As a 5-fingered one. What could that look like? What does that look like? How do I become omnibeneficent? That's my goal. I want to be omnibeneficent. And so when I use that word, I notice that an orientation comes to my heart. It somehow not only holds my, you know, how much am I recycling? How much am I not eating almonds because they take too much water? You know, all those kinds of considerations, which yes, please. But it also, omnibeneficent, talks about how I treat others, how I maintain my heart, my center, my well-being. How courageous can my love be? Really? So, you know, what I say is every being has been given a way, has been given a perfect design for thriving life, a thriving life way to contribute to the whole. I can witness it in all the other beings that are on the hoop. So then I ask, you know, as a human being, what do I know about my thriving life design? Can I believe that I even have it? You know, can I believe that I even have it? I believe that I do. I believe that we were given this seat on this sacred hoop of life on this incredibly powerful, creative, uh, robust is not even covering it, the vitality that is coming out of this Mother Earth at all times. I've been given a seat upon her. I've been given a seat to contribute to this community of beauty. There's very few human beings that aren't moved at the sight of our relatives, at the sight of a whale breaching, at the sight of a platypus, at the sight of, a bear tending their young. We feel that integrity. We feel that truth. Can we accept that we are a part of it? So to move into just a slightly more scientific way of looking at it, my daughter, Lila June Johnston, that's Lyla. I really put her out there because she's making a pretty bold contribution right now. And she has a TED Talk out, and she just completed her PhD looking at traditional land management practices. Well, that sounds very dry, but here's what I want to point out about what she was explaining to me that is changing, my narrative. And it's a narrative that I now get to share a little bit. But she was talking about how when scientifically they drill core samples into the earth, and the deeper down you go, the farther back in time you go, there's like sedimentary layers of time and civilization and such, or life community. And so if you go back far enough, you might find a place, and they're looking at fossilized pollen samples to understand what kinds of flora and fauna were in the area, and there might just be a few. And then we notice the arrival of the five-fingered ones to an area, and suddenly it begins to expand and grow. I mean, I'm going to say explode, except we're so wary of that, when we cause invasive species and things like that. But this isn't a healthy way. So we might not realize it, but all of the hardwood forests in the southeast and such were cultivated. So it gives us a new view, first of all, of agriculture. Agriculture isn't necessarily the domination. Agriculture you could perform in such a way that even thousands of years later, scientists haven't even noticed that this was going on until very recently. Wow, all this was actually cultivated by human beings. We didn't know that. So this cultivation and this, I say, cooperation and collaboration with land, with bioregion, was extensive. Thousands and thousands of acres at a time were cultivated, and our presence, my daughter's case is we have been a keystone species. Our presence caused places to thrive. Yes, human beings. Because I say right now, we have a very low self-esteem as a species. We are coming to believe that everywhere we go, everything we touch, we destroy. No, not so. Not so. I mean, so when we think about when the ships arrived on this continent that I'm sitting on here, what we call the Americas, Turtle Island, no matter where they landed, what did the reports say? Whether they landed in the South America, on the East Coast of North America, what did they always say? They couldn't believe their eyes, could they? The land was fruiting and flowering, flourishing, abundance, fertile. Game was plentiful. And so they called it an Eden. And this is a story that has to be retold. This is another example of retelling the old story. Because when they called it Eden, it implied that it had been undespoiled by human touch. And I have to think that the thinking at the time was, well, if this land had been touched by human beings, it would look like the place that we came from, Europe. But it doesn't. Therefore, it must be undespoiled by human touch. Well, obviously, that's well known to be completely mistaken. There were millions of human beings on the continent. Civilizations had risen and fallen here, and not just this continent. Africa, Australia, anywhere on the planet. There were human beings who were understanding a different way of being a presence here. So we don't have to wonder if it's possible. We don't have to imagine, gosh, could that ever be? It has already happened and we know it. But the narrative is twisted in our mind. So not only did we have methodologies for creating, flourishing, living, agricultural practices, but we also had social technology. On this continent, there were thousands of languages that were unintelligible to each other, thousands of different cosmologies. And these peoples were cohabitating on the same continent. Was it perfect? Was there never war? No, I'm not saying that. But I am going to say whatever they were doing, however they were doing it, it was not destroying their home. It was not destroying what they relied on to live and what future generations relied on to live. Their social technologies were such that they could have enough right relations with each other. Cooperation, collaboration, respect, honoring of boundaries. That this place was rocking, right? This place was thriving. So are we incapable of peace? Are we incapable of diversity? Are we incapable of cooperation and collaboration with those who look and sound and think differently than us? No. We have evidence of this. It is well within the capacity of human beings. Let's recognize that. Let's take that into the body. Let's let it rewire the neural pathways. Let's let that truth speak to the disease that is the lie. That this earth would be better off without us. Could she live without us? Honestly, I don't know. But I do feel like at this point I can say she cannot be her fullest expression. She cannot fulfill her destiny. She has a destiny within this solar system. She has accountability and responsibility to this cosmos, to this galaxy that is hurtling through all different energetics and densities in the cosmos. She has her role to play there. And I believe that she can't be her fullest expression without us. She can be some kind of expression, I would imagine, but she can't be her fullest one without us because we're here. There are grandmothers who have said to me, there is much in the universe that counts upon this human heart in order to have their fullest expression of well-being. It's this. This is our primary contribution. Our feeling, our heart, our love. This is a contribution that cannot come from any other source. So, I'm not that interested in sustainability. I'm interested in having a mad love affair with this Mother Earth. And I always say, try having a mad love affair with intellect alone. How far are you going to get? How satisfying is it going to be? That's what we're attempting to do right now. So this is also part of placing myself before the truth frequently. I've been placing myself before the truth here, and I've been placing myself before the truth here. I feel like this whole wave of somatic healing and experiencing is welling up for a reason from us. We have to understand what's in the body. The mind cannot work it out. The mind cannot have the mad love affair with Earth. The mind cannot have the mad love affair with Holy Mani, the chosen one will come. But it helps the mind for me to explain it. But that's not the same as having the mad love affair. Right? So these are the things that are on my mind and heart and in my body to express to any kind of new narrative, new to who? Actually, this narrative of Mother Earth as sterile resource, that's a very new narrative. The narrative I'm explaining and referring to and exploring with you here today is a much, much, much older narrative. So let's recognize that also. Well, I'll end by saying, what one of my grandmothers said to me in a healing session. She said, you were born into beauty, as beauty, for joyful life. That's the truth. You were born into beauty, as beauty, for joyful life. That's the truth. What about that narrative? Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Very grateful.